Christian Fletcher, the rebel who paddled out with a skateboard. Christian Fletcher turned pro at 14 years old in 1985 and immediately began treating waves like ramps. At an age when most surfers were perfecting smooth carves along the face, Fletcher pushed above the lip, importing skateboarding's aerial freedom straight into the lineup. He was recognized as a prodigy destined for contest wins, but instead of fitting into the neat structure of competitive surfing, he attacked waves with an unpolished, defiant style that felt foreign to the sport's tradition. Christian grew up surfing spots like San Onofre and Trestles, where his family carried deep roots in California surf culture. Blending that upbringing with the skate-heavy atmosphere around Capistrano Bay in Venice, he learned to surf on his skateboard and skate on his surfboard. His father, Herbie Fletcher, even pointed out that skateboarding not only shaped Christian's creativity, but also built his legs into a weapon, making him stronger, faster, and more explosive in the water. The surf establishment, however, didn't embrace him right away. Magazines and organizers saw him as reckless, too chaotic for the polished image they wanted to project. He wasn't the clean-cut, aloha shirt poster boy they could market. He showed up looking more like he belonged in a punk band, with chains, bleached hair, and a heavy metal attitude that rattled the lineup. Fletcher admitted years later that he was working on being the most hated surfer ever, and he backed it up by committing to maneuvers that no one else dared to try. Those early aerials weren't just stunts. They seeded a new language in surfing, one where innovation and risk became as vital as smooth turns. The very moves once dismissed as disruptive formed the blueprint for the air-focused progression that dominates competitions today. And Fletcher's refusal to protect surfing's old image set the stage for other athletes determined to carry crossover skills into the ocean. Pedro Barros, the skate champion who conquered waves. Pedro Barros built his reputation as a fearless Brazilian skateboarder, blasting through bowls with raw power and earning an Olympic silver medal in skateboarding. But while his place in skate culture was sealed long before Tokyo 2020, he wasn't content to stop with concrete. Barros wanted to bring that same explosive energy into surfing, testing whether the moves that made him a champion on land could translate onto waves. The ocean, though, wasn't so forgiving. In skate parks, every section is ready-made for repetition. A vert wall is the same each time you hit it. In surfing, a ramp might appear once and vanish the next second. Timing shifts with every swell, and one missed beat can turn an air into a wipeout. That unpredictability marked the barrier between a skater who surfs for fun and an athlete trying to push the boundaries of what's possible. His breakthrough came at Boa Vista Village in Brazil, a wave pool designed to deliver perfect repeating sections. For Barros, it wasn't just convenient practice. It felt familiar, almost like home. He described the pool as the closest thing I've ever seen to a skate park, a place where he could try the same trick again and again until his body learned the motion the way it had on coping and transitions. Inside that controlled environment, years of frustration in the ocean dissolved. Barros began sticking airs in the pool that he had never managed to land in natural waves. The same cycle of repetition that forged him into a skateboarding champion suddenly accelerated his surfing progression too. Wave pools, he proved, could turn skate instincts into water-based breakthroughs by giving athletes the repetition the ocean refuses to offer. And while his story shows how artificial waves can push a skater deeper into surfing, the next athlete reminds us that crossover works just as powerfully in the other direction. Amuro Tsuzuki, the Olympian bridging generations. Amuro Tsuzuki, a top Japanese shortboarder and the first woman from Japan to qualify for the WSL Championship Tour, already held a historic place in her sport by the time she competed in the Tokyo 2020 Olympics. Representing her country on home turf in the Olympic shortboard division cemented her status. But even with those milestones, Tsuzuki showed a curiosity that pushed her beyond the usual paths of training. Unlike many crossover athletes who started on skateboards as kids, Tsuzuki's first real introduction came later. During international events in California, she linked up with Olympic skateboarding bronze medalist Sky Brown at the ISA World Surfing Games in Huntington Beach in 2022. The two spent time together off the contest schedule, with Brown giving Tsuzuki a hands-on skate lesson that was filmed by the Olympic Channel. Under Brown's guidance, Tsuzuki worked through the basics: ollies, manuals, and shove-its. These weren't just tricks for novelty. Brown emphasized the value of rhythm and foot placement, skills that naturally carry into surfing. For Tsuzuki, even something as simple as committing to the pop of an ollie related directly to the timing it takes to throw an aerial off a wave's lip. Though she already competed at the highest level, the short session gave Tsuzuki a new perspective. It wasn't a career shift or reinvention, but a reminder that even at the top, there's space to grow by borrowing from another discipline. Keeping a skateboard close during her travels offered her fresh ways to train balance and body control outside the water. Her openness to learn from a younger athlete highlighted how crossover isn't just about power or tricks. It's also about mindset. And as Tsuzuki continued her competitive journey, another figure was shaping the surf-skate connection in a different way, not with maneuvers, but with stories. Jamie Brisick, the storyteller of surf and skate. Brisick's tool is the pen. He turned his pro surf experience into long-form reporting that explains why surf and skate personalities do what they do. Instead of chasing trophies, Jamie Brisick built a reputation as one of the most respected voices in surf and skate culture. His writing reaches past maneuvers into the psychology and performance behind them, asking why athletes create the personas they project in magazines, films, and contests. He often points out that surfers and skaters don't just perform tricks, they also perform identities, consciously or unconsciously shaping characters for the culture around them. This perspective gave him a way to explore the deeper stories where authenticity and image overlap. His book, Becoming Westerly, documenting the life of Westerly Windina, formerly Peter Druin, is one of the clearest examples. For Brisick, it wasn't only about a surfer's career, but about gender, transformation, and the broader idea of identity itself. Brisick also looked outward to communities caught in conflict, like Reunion Island, where shark attacks reshaped the everyday relationship between locals and the sea. These stories reinforced his belief that surfing isn't always carefree. It's tangled with politics, survival, and personal struggle. His empathy comes through in these portraits, an effort to understand people on the margins. Older surfers past their competitive prime, or those whose stories don't fit the polished surf industry image. Living between Los Angeles and New York, Brisick uses that dual perspective to show how the surf-skate connection is cultural, not just athletic. Creativity, rebellion, and questions of identity drive both worlds, and his writing captures that invisible thread. By reframing the crossover through words instead of tricks, Brisick opened space for new voices and new generations. Some of those voices aren't just storytellers, but athletes themselves, young enough to still be learning, yet already guiding others with the confidence of veterans. Sky Brown, the young bridge between two worlds. Sky Brown represents what this crossover looks like in its youngest form. At just 13 years and 28 days old, she won bronze in women's park skateboarding at the Tokyo 2020 Olympics, becoming Great Britain's youngest ever Olympic medalist. But she's not only a skateboarder, she also competes seriously in surfing, showing that one athlete can thrive in both sports at the same time. Her role isn't just about competing, it's also about sharing. In California, the Olympic Channel captured her teaching Japan's Amuro Tsuzuki how to handle a skateboard. Tsuzuki was already an elite surfer, but under Brown's guidance, she picked up fundamentals like ollies and balance drills. For Brown, it was proof that experience between sports can travel in both directions, and that age doesn't matter when you live in both cultures every day. Much of this outlook comes from where she trains. Brown calls Venice Beach Skate Park her favorite, not only for the terrain, but because it sits within earshot of the ocean. That closeness to the beach lets skating and surfing feel like parts of the same rhythm. She spends hours skating there with her younger brother, then moves to the waves nearby. To her, it isn't about switching gears from one sport to another. It's about freedom expressed through boards on both surfaces. That freedom explains her wide influence. Kids worldwide see Sky Brown not as someone forced to choose one path, but as proof you can pursue both with joy. She shows a generation that it's possible to compete at the highest level in two sports and still carry the ease of a kid having fun. Sky's example is recent, so who laid the first track for this crossover? Enter Tony Alva. Tony Alva, the original cross-pollinator. Tony Alva grew up in Santa Monica in the late 1960s, surrounded by surf culture at Malibu and Venice Beach. By the time he was 10, he was already riding both surfboards and skateboards, drawing influence from the fast, aggressive Hawaiian style of surfing. Rather than copying the smoother moves of older riders, Alva leaned into speed, risk, and improvisation. His skating looked more like surfing translated onto concrete, and it was this raw approach that led him into the Zephyr skateboard team by 1972. With the Z-Boys, Alva and his peers began skating empty pools and redefined what the sport could be. He pioneered vertical skating and was one of the first to land a frontside air in an empty pool, a maneuver often credited as the start of modern skateboarding. That kind of aerial language echoed straight back toward surfing, hinting at maneuvers surfers would attempt years later. Alva said it himself, "I was always a better skater than I was a surfer, but being a better surfer was the driving force for me, so I was applying surf stuff to skating." He proved that skating could borrow from surfing, and then push surfing forward in return. Technological change fueled his rise too. The introduction of urethane wheels gave Alva and others the grip and speed to trace surf-inspired lines across asphalt. Outside performance, he cemented his role as a cultural figure by founding Alva Skates in 1977 at just 19, and later collaborating with Vans on early skate shoes. He showed that influence could extend from the pool to the products skaters used every day. Even today, Alva keeps a strong link to the ocean, still chasing waves from Santa Monica down to Baja. His career set the foundation for the crossover we see now, where boundaries bend, styles collide, and one board inspires another. And in the decades that followed, influence continued spilling across sports, even reaching a snowboarding icon who made surfers look at their own waves differently. Shaun White, the snowboarder who surfed the line. Shaun White built his legacy on snow, but his reach extends further. Known worldwide as a 3-time Olympic gold medalist and X Games champion, White also made a name for himself in skateboarding and keeps a steady connection to surfing at his home base in Encinitas, California. For him, the ocean serves as another canvas, quieter than packed halfpipes or competition arenas, but still demanding the same focus he carried into world-class runs. His path into board sports wasn't limited to snow. With skateboarding fundamentals sharpened under the influence of Tony Hawk, White carried technical precision and creativity from concrete into snowboarding. The back-to-back double corks and other groundbreaking aerials he made routine weren't isolated to one sport. They stood as part of a larger dialogue between skating and snowboarding. That crossover of ideas is exactly what research credits with inspiring surfers to imagine new ways of approaching waves. His maneuvers didn't just showcase skill, they expanded the shared vocabulary across all boards. Surfing itself was always nearby in his story. His father named him after South African surf champion Shaun Thompson, anticipating an ocean future. At 7 years old, though, a violent wipeout left him rattled, tumbling in the surf until he couldn't catch his breath. He backed away from serious surf competition after that. Yet years later, living just steps from beach breaks in Encinitas, he found his way back to the lineup. Surfing became less about career milestones and more about a personal outlet alongside snow and skate, a reminder that all three sports fed the same drive. What makes White's impact significant is visibility. His fame pulled mainstream attention onto board sports not as separate silos, but as a connected culture where styles and risks travel freely. Shaun's visibility connected mainstream audiences to a board sports culture that crosses surf, skate, and snow, and sometimes that culture advanced not through tricks, but through the equipment underfoot. To Herbie Fletcher, the innovator with grip. Herbie Fletcher showed how innovation could reshape surfing not through tricks, but through traction. A surfer, skater, and designer, he became one of the key figures linking the two cultures. Growing up skating pools in California during the 1960s and later moving between Venice Beach and Hawaii, Fletcher already lived at the intersection of both scenes. But it was his decision to found Astrodeck in San Clemente that left the deepest mark on surfing's progression. Before Astrodeck, surfers relied entirely on wax. Wax gave some grip, but it melted in the sun, washed off when submerged, and too often failed when precision mattered most. Skateboarders, meanwhile, enjoyed the consistency of grip tape under their feet. Fletcher recognized the imbalance. If skating relied on dependable traction to unlock aerials and aggressive maneuvers, why wasn't there an equivalent solution for surfing? His answer was Astrodeck, a foam traction pad that attached directly to the surfboard tail. Astrodeck removed a practical barrier that had limited surfers for years. For the first time, riders could drive through turns and push full pressure into their back foot without sliding off. That trust in footing gave them freedom to attack waves vertically, carve with more power, and start experimenting with aerials in ways that echoed skateboarding. What wax couldn't provide in consistency, Astrodeck delivered, and that consistency is what opened surfing's path toward progression. Beyond the product itself, Herbie Fletcher embodied the cultural bridge. He surfed the Hawaiian reefs, skated aggressively in California, and raised a surf dynasty through his sons Christian and Nathan, both recognized for their boundary-breaking styles. By turning a simple idea, skate-style grip, into a tool for the water, Fletcher gave surfers the foundation they needed to push limits. His contribution shows how a skate-inspired solution could directly enable surf innovation, proof that new ground is broken whenever athletes and creators cross boundaries instead of staying inside them. The story of these 8 figures comes back to one central problem. When surfing and skateboarding stayed isolated, both sports hit creative ceilings. Change happened when boundaries blurred. Some pushed technology forward, like Herbie Fletcher with Astrodeck. Others shaped how athletes train, from Pedro Barros using wave pools to Sky Brown showing cross-training in action. And some, like Jamie Brisick, carried the cultural storytelling that gave it all context. Mastery grows at the edges of disciplines. Which one of these 8 changed the way you see board sports? Tell us in the comments, and subscribe to Let Me Explain for more rad videos.